Before 1950, fashion models like Little Val were called mannequins, and using that word refers to a very particular era in the shop from 1938 to around the end of 51, when it meant being an in-house model, long before social media and the supermodels we know today, although some were well known, as we'll see later on. But whether a model or a mannequin, being well presented was an integral part of working in the showroom, and the girls wore clothes sourced by Mirelle whilst at work or in formal, highly organised public fashion shows like this one, which took place in Hull in September 1961. Here, social connections mattered too, as you can see, because Angie Snelling, daughter of Maisie Parks, joined in as a volunteer model, as it was known by then, for fun, which means no payment. She's alongside Showroom Girl Sue, who you probably recognise, and Mary Johnson on the right, booked freelance for this occasion, who came from a place called Burton Pidsey outside Hull. They're modelling clothes that were available for purchase, as well as furs, and Sue's wearing a hat with a wide picture-style rim, which you'll learn more about in the fashions. They bought their own accessories to wear, like shoes. Although Hull had many furriers, like Silver's Furriers, who supplied Mirelle with furs around 1957, as you can see, Nobel furs, or Nobel furs, were worn in this show, and by gum, they were expensive as well as created especially for the house of Mirelle. In the first photo that started this talk, Molly's wearing a white fur stole, and the time, 1965, makes it consistent with it being a Nobel fur, which would have been expensive for her too, although perhaps bought at cost price discount as she worked in the shop. Mirelle ran at least 2 external fashion shows a year from 1946 to about 1976, and usually the ticket price was sold in aid of charity. And Mira's theatrical background was a perfect match for delivering them. Her signature ran all the way through. They staged some of the most high-profile shows in Hull and East Riding. The girls talk fondly about travelling by the Lincoln Castle ferry, the wind whipping up their hair across the Humber to Lincolnshire, or piling into a car to ride away from the city to places like Driffield near Sledmere Hall, which you can see in the locations. But they also did big shows which they sold tickets for at Hull's Guildhall and City Hall, as you can see from this programme cover for a show shortly after the one earlier called An International Fantasia of Fashion in October 1961. Mirelle's reputation stretched far and wide. It was no exaggeration that people of fame and fortune came from miles around to shop there, like Pat Bredin, the Hull-born singer, for instance, who was probably a friend of Mira's and might even have been trained by her in the West End Studios stage school. And she was seen in the audience of Mirelle's fashion shows. Do you think she's wearing Mirelle in this picture from a bit after 1957 when she represented the UK in the Eurovision Song Contest? It's possible she was. Let us know in the comments below. They also travelled to Cutler's Hall in Sheffield and Yorkshire's Sledmere Hall, where this photo was taken. One showroom girl calling it their largest, biggest and most flamboyant fashion show. It was held at Sir Richard and Lady Sykes' house, a stately home which was also a stud that bred horses, in February 1963, and is now known as Sledmere House and open to the public if you want to go and explore yourself. The link is below. In the midst of the big freeze, a too long period of cold, snowy weather, at the beginning of 1963, they lined up on the terrace outside, a mixture of showroom girls and models. Sue Eggleston, as well as dark-haired freelance model Mary, and you can get a feel for the clothes they were selling too. Zenobia Taranko, an ash blonde whose filmmaker Alfred Hitchcock would have liked, was also there that day. Another showroom girl who started in the 50s. Like Hull itself, where many visited or emigrated from all over Europe, Zenobia was originally a Polish refugee who came to Hull escaping the war. And this lady, from a much earlier photo in March 1945, is Teresa Erviti. The shop called her Spanish Teresa or Terry, and she came to Hull as a refugee during the Spanish Civil War in the late 30s, before working at Mirelle in the showroom, selling clothes before Zenobia joined. From this photo you can see it was a mixture of characters and looks, sizes and ages, as well as the continental touch from Teresa, Zenobia and others that set off clothes just right, and ultimately they always sold. What do you think of the gowns they're modelling? Do you recognise any of the designs from this photo? We don't have a record who made these gorgeous dresses, but they weren't Mirelle makes, who stopped making clothes more than a decade before. Contact us through our website or comment below if you have any suggestions. The one on the left with the black bow looks particularly like a famous gown by Christian Dior, for instance. We'd love to hear from you.